Nuclear stocks rallied in 2024. Let's take a look now at a few specific names. Constellation Energy, that's up 95% year to date. NuScale up just under a cool 500% year to date. And of course, we got to talk about Oklo, backed by Sam Altman, up more than 100% year to date. But Bloomberg reports several hedge fund managers are actually cutting back on their nuclear investments. For more on what's ahead for nuclear in 2025, let's welcome in now Mark Nelson, Radiant Energy Group Managing Director. Mark, it's always good to see you and have you on the show. So listen, there was obviously, Mark, and we've talked about this, just a ton of excitement around all things nuclear in 2024. Big, important theme for investors. How do you see, Mark, this theme and trend? How do you see it evolving now over the next 12 months as we head into 2025?
Well, we got to look backwards a little bit to look forwards. 2023 was the year we started hearing some of the tech players behind the scenes thinking about nuclear more. 2024, huge year. It's like the whole world discovered nuclear. The way I'd put it is everything kind of became about AI, and AI became about energy, and suddenly people realized that the tech players did not have a realistic energy growth strategy. They said they were using 100% renewables when they were just going off the grid. Well, they ran out of grid. So what we're looking at now is a 2024 where the biggest banks, a bunch of the world's countries, all made commitments to saying, we love nuclear. That's not the same as building nuclear, and 2025 is going to be the year of show me.
With that in mind, I mean, we've heard a remarkable, and this kind of gets back to what you were saying, we've heard a remarkable amount of companies in the cloud space even talking about nuclear reactors, that they're interested in fast tracking some of their own build out around. What is the timeline that we should be kind of gauging or grading these companies up against when you hear companies like Salesforce or like Oracle talking on their earnings calls about nuclear reactors and how much they're earmarking to invest in that?
I think what's become clear is that the top executives of these companies were sort of blindsided by the energy problem, and they're scrambling to learn as much about energy as quickly as possible. Nuclear is a special form of energy. They're learning about nuclear as they go. One of the difficult things I have to deal with is hearing announcements from companies and attempting to translate that into nuclear reality. What does it mean when it says we have a license to build? So trying to understand that is one of the most difficult parts of my job. What I can tell you, though, is the noise is all in the right direction for those of us who want to build nuclear plants. We just have to be able to respond. I don't think that the tiny reactors are going to be the bulk of the long-term future, and I think I'm backed up by this, by groups like the International Atomic Energy Agency, which sees them as being the small reactors, maybe about 25% of the nuclear market by 2050. What I see, though, is these small reactors helping companies like Oracle explore nuclear at all. Most of America's nuclear plants can power a few million people, but could be doubled in size if we started building more reactors. So what I'm looking for is commitments to build, either the small ones or the large ones, coming through late 2025 and early 2026. That would, to me, indicate that the nuclear fuels stocks, the nuclear supplier stocks, would continue to see support like we've seen from this 2024 year of nuclear discovery.
Mark, I'm curious, Trump is moving back into the White House. What does that possibly mean for the industry? What are ripple effects? He wants Chris Wright as his energy secretary, notably does serve on the board of Oklo, Mark.
I've heard nothing but good things about Chris Wright from the energy space. My family is in oil and gas. I grew up in the traditional energy world before switching to nuclear. It's very interesting to see a coming sort of joining between the biggest energy consumers and possibly the biggest traditional energy companies over exploring nuclear. When I see Chris Wright coming in, I see somebody who loves what he's heard from the nuclear story, and his job at the Department of Energy will be to see how he can continue the momentum from, say, the DOE loans office attempting to bring in nuclear players to issue loans to build reactors. I think the big question for me is whether this is going to be a nuclear inclusive story. Is this going to be one of just small experimental reactors, which, don't get me wrong, are very exciting. I'm interested in advising some myself, but also the large traditional reactors whose incredible performance to date in operation, not construction, has led to the possibility of a nuclear boom that we've been seeing.
Mark, what kind of real estate is necessary to bring online more nuclear, and what type of deregulation would that need to be coupled with?
Well, Honestly, the real estate play for me has been more about building load, building data centers on farmland around nuclear plants. We've heard of at least one case where a nuclear reactor was possibly going to be restarted, except that the current plans have been interrupted by a rare bumblebee that might be present on that land. So I think that there's going to be some common sense approaches to nation critical energy supply projects like turning nuclear plants back on or expanding them if there's a accommodation for the protected species that I definitely expect to move faster in the new administration. I don't personally see an enormous acceleration from deregulating the reactor technology itself. I think that there's a long history of aggressively exploring nuclear reactors back in the 1950s and 60s, where we discovered which types worked well, which types didn't well. I think we're going to update some of that with some new techniques and some new talent. But the main thing for me is seeing people willing to take the risk of tens of billions of dollars coming together in a consortium approach to put together the users, the sellers, and the reactor vendors all in one package deal to avoid the errors that have plagued nuclear construction in the past.
Yeah, Mark, really fascinating. And I feel for that bumblebee too. Whatever I can look up after this, you now piqued my interest in seeing what that impact is as well. Mark, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Certainly.